Welcome back to the Airbnb Superhost Secrets podcast. All right, so, picture this. You're an Airbnb host, cruising along, got that Superhost status,
Yeah.
and bam, you get this booking request. It just sets off alarm bells. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
Like maybe it's a group booking, but for a really small space, or the guest is being super vague in their answers. What do you do when your gut is screaming, danger?
Yeah.
But you don't want to risk those penalties. Or even worse, lose your Superhost badge.
It's such a tough spot. So many hosts find themselves in that situation.
Totally. Because on the one hand, you want to keep those guests happy,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, you got to protect yourself and your property.
It really is a balancing act.
For sure. Okay, let's break down this problem a bit.
All right, so the standard Airbnb cancellation policies, they're pretty clear. But the thing is, they don't always account for those gut feeling situations. Like, what if a host cancels a few times? Even if it's for legitimate reasons,
Right.
it can totally impact their Superhost status. And it can even hurt their search ranking.
And we all know how important that Superhost badge is.
Oh, absolutely.
Not to mention the financial penalties. Oof. Those can really add up.
Yeah, it can be a double whammy for hosts. You've got
I
the
know.
financial loss and then the damage to your reputation. There's a story I read about a host who suspected a guest was going to throw a party.
Oh, no.
They tried to cancel beforehand, but Airbnb wouldn't let them.
So they were just stuck.
Pretty much. They had to let the guest check in, and you guessed it. A huge party happened.
Oh, man.
Luckily, the damage wasn't too bad, but it just shows how vulnerable hosts can be under the current system.
That's got to be so stressful.
Totally. Knowing something's off, but feeling powerless to stop it.
So is there anything hosts can do?
Well, that brings us to the strategy that some hosts are using to get around this. It basically involves using a specific house rule about ID verification, and they use that to cancel bookings penalty-free.
Okay, that's interesting. How does that work?
So the house rule usually says something like, must be 25 and up to rent. For security purposes, please upload a copy of your photo ID within 72 hours of booking, or we reserve the right to cancel.
So it's like, even if they have that gut feeling about a guest, they've got this rule as a backup.
Exactly. And, a lot of guests, they either miss the rule or they just forget to send in their ID on time.
Ah, I see.
So then the host has a completely legitimate reason to cancel.
Through Airbnb support.
Right.
So they're not technically like lying or breaking any rules,
Yeah.
but they're kind of using the system to their advantage.
Yeah, you could say that.
Huh.
And the key here is how you handle the whole cancellation process.
Okay.
You absolutely have to contact Airbnb support directly by phone, not through the app or the website.
Oh, okay. I'm taking notes here. So you call them up, and then what?
You explain that you need to cancel because of a house rules violation,
Got it.
and that usually triggers them to move your case up to a higher level of support.
Where you have a better chance of getting the cancellation approved.
Exactly.
It's like a secret code to get to the right people.
Kind of, and this is where it gets even more strategic.
Okay.
They might offer to reach out to the guest for you to get the missing ID.
Which would defeat the whole purpose.
Right. You need to politely decline their offer and just firmly reiterate why you're canceling.
So you're basically saying, I need to cancel because of a house rules violation.
Yep.
I don't want you to contact them. Just cancel the booking.
Exactly. You got to be firm.
It sounds kind of scary.
I know, but it can be super effective. And remember, you're totally within your rights to enforce your own house rules.
That's true. I bet some listeners are thinking, wait, doesn't Airbnb have rules about ID requests?
Oh, we do. And that's where another part of this strategy comes in. See, Airbnb doesn't like blanket ID requests. But they do allow them if it's connected to things like insurance requirements or city ordinances or HOA rules.
So you're basically putting the ID request in a legitimate context.
Right. It's like extra protection for your house rule.
This is brilliant. It sounds like a total game changer for hosts who felt trapped by the system.
It can be. But you got to remember, Airbnb's policies can change. So always stay up to date. And it's also super important to think about the ethical side of things.
That's a really good point.
It's definitely a gray area.
Yeah, it definitely feels like there's a whole secret language to Airbnb hosting.
There is. It's all about knowing the ins and outs.
So we've talked about using house rules and working with Airbnb support.
Sure.
Are there any other pro tips that hosts should keep in mind?
Oh, yeah, definitely. A big one is never cancel through your Airbnb account itself. Always pick up the phone and call support.
Why is that so important?
Well, because it adds that human element. You
Yeah.
can explain your situation, give them some context, and maybe even appeal to their empathy a little bit.
Right.
It's amazing how much more effective a phone call can be compared to just clicking buttons online.
Makes sense. It's like you're building a connection, showing them you're not just another username.
Exactly. And even if they can't give you a full exception, they might offer other solutions.
Hmm.
Like they might suggest you reach out to the guest directly and see if they're willing to cancel on their end.
Oh, okay. So sometimes the simplest solution is the best.
Right. It's about finding a win-win for everyone.
Okay, so we've got phone calls, we've got house rules. Anything else?
Documentation.
Hmm.
If you have any concerns about a guest whatsoever, document everything.
Like what kind of things?
Save messages, screenshots, anything that backs up your worries.
So that if you ever need to explain things to Airbnb, you have a record.
Exactly. It's all about creating a paper trail. It can be so helpful if you ever need to dispute a claim or justify a cancellation.
It's like building your defense case just in case.
You could say that. And, beyond the specific tactics, the main takeaway here is for hosts to be proactive and informed.
Right.
The more you understand about how Airbnb works, the better prepared you'll be to handle any situation that comes up.
As we're talking about all this, I can't help but think about the ethical side of things too.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's a bit of a gray area for sure.
On the one hand, hosts have a right to protect their property and their other guests.
Totally. They've put a lot of time and money into creating a welcoming space.
But on the other hand, guests deserve to be treated fairly and respectfully. No one wants to feel like they're being tricked or discriminated against.
And it's crucial to remember that Airbnb is built on trust.
So while these strategies can be helpful, it's really important to use them responsibly and ethically.
I completely agree. Hosts need to find that balance between looking out for themselves and maintaining the spirit of the Airbnb community.
Being smart, but also being fair.
Yeah, well said. And it's a conversation that needs more attention. One we'll definitely be diving into more in future episodes.
Now, while we've been talking about these kind of underground tactics, I'm curious about something else. What happens if these methods become, like, common knowledge? You know what I mean? How might Airbnb respond?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if Airbnb even knows about these strategies. And if they do, what are they doing about it?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's tough to say for sure, but I doubt they're totally in the dark.
Right.
They've got these whole teams, dedicated to analyzing data tracking trends, looking for patterns.
So we're probably on the lookout for any weird spikes in cancellation. Oh, yeah. Especially ones that are connected to specific house rules or communication patterns.
Like if a bunch of hosts are suddenly canceling using the same excuse.
Exactly. And if they
Yeah.
see something fishy, they'll probably dig a little deeper.
And what happens if they catch a host,
Yeah.
deliberately exploiting these loopholes?
Well, they have a few options. They could issue warnings, suspend accounts temporarily,
Oh, wow.
or even permanently ban hosts from the platform.
So, yeah, not something to mess around with.
Definitely not. Airbnb has to protect their platform, for both hosts and guests.
It's like a constant game of cat and mouse,
It is. Airbnb is always trying to stay one step ahead.
trying to keep things fair for everyone.
Exactly. And it shows just how dynamic these online platforms are. They're always changing,
Yeah,
adapting to new challenges.
trying to find that balance between giving people freedom and keeping things under control.
Right. And as short-term rentals become more popular, there's going to be more scrutiny, from regulators and from the public.
So it's more important than ever for hosts to be in the know.
Absolutely. They got to stay up to date on the rules, know the best practices, and operate ethically.
Couldn't agree more. And that's really what we wanted to get across today.
To all our Airbnb Superhost Secrets listeners out there, knowledge is power.
Do your research, stay informed, and connect with other hosts. Share your experiences.
Exactly. Learn from each other. And most importantly, make decisions that feel right for you and your business.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Airbnb cancellations.
My pleasure. It's always great to chat with you.
And to all our listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe to the Airbnb Superhost Secrets podcast for more tips and strategies. We'll see you next time.